Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. We've finally arrived at the last episode of Covertape Chaos Zapped, which will cover the final two tapes that came with Zzap issue 90. Much like with my Commodore format series beforehand, it's been a long journey to get to this point, and I'm glad that I have managed to cover every single megatape from the classic run of the magazine. This doesn't spell the end of Covertape Chaos entirely, as next year I plan to cover the remaining real action tapes that came with Commodore Force, which is what Zzap was rebranded as. For now though, let's concentrate on finishing things off here. The magazine featured a roundup of every single movie-based game that had been released for the C64 over the years, and there was also a preview of a new upcoming Dizzy game. As for the tapes, well, let's find out, shall we? The first tape is made up of two big-name titles from the sales curve, both of which are conversions of arcade games. The first one is Silkworm, which was originally made by Tecmo and is a horizontal shoot 'em up where you can decide to control either a helicopter or a jeep, or team up with a friend to take on the game in co-op. This is a fantastic conversion that is still really fun to play today, and it also isn't too tough compared to many other shooters of the time, other than the fact that you are only given a single credit, which is a bit stingy. The player controlling the chopper will have a much easier time of it, as the jeep is obviously less agile and it's a lot more difficult to gun down aerial enemies. There are optional force fields that can be found and picked up for a bit of extra protection, or you could decide to shoot them instead, which obliterates every enemy on the screen. Partway through each stage you will come up against a sub-boss known as a snakehead, who really aren't too difficult to deal with if you know what you're doing, and then there's a main stage boss as well. The Zzap review team were all quite keen on the game, with Gordo saying, "This is one shoot 'em up that you can't afford to miss," and Katie adding, "What really makes this so much fun is the all-action, fast and furious gameplay." The C64 version was given a final score of 91%, which was just 1% behind the Amiga version, and the review concluded with, "A fast, frenetic and well-presented shoot 'em up, well worth a few shekels." The other arcade conversion was of Taito's The Ninja Warriors, which was a game I hadn't heard of at all until a few years ago when both Jeff Gerstmann and the Happy Console Gamer talked about it around the same time. The original version made use of Taito's triple monitor hardware, which I had seen before with Darius, so of course any home version would be squeezed down to a single screen. The notorious tune Daddy Mulk from the original version is present on the title screen here on the C64, but there is no music at all during gameplay, which makes everything feel a little bit dull. The levels also start to feel rather repetitive, as they mostly feature the same handful of enemy types over and over again. It wasn't till stage 4 that I saw a new enemy type enter the mix. You are given several continues this time, so it's possible to advance quite far into the game without resorting to cheats at all. As far as I can tell, this port is limited to just one of the characters and single player. In the arcade version you could choose from two other male ninjas as well and play in co-op. As for the Zzap reviewers, Robin was a fan of the arcade game already and quite enjoyed the home port, saying, "A very close conversion indeed with a great ending." Whereas Stu was unfamiliar with the game and was less impressed, saying, "Fans of the arcade are well served, but there's little for anyone else to get excited about." They gave the Ninja Warriors a final score of 79%, concluding with, "One of the better ninja games around, although not very original." Now we switch over to Tape 2 and a homebrew game called Halax. This is yet another Breakout or Arkanoid style game, which is quite well done. The music in particular is really good. My main problem with this is it doesn't really offer anything new. The power-ups are all things we've seen before, such as extended or sticky bats, for example. My go-to game for this genre remains Crackout, and it probably always will. Solid stuff, but unremarkable. From there we go to the now standard text adventure that we get every issue. This one is called The Case of a Mixed Up Shyma, and it puts you in the shoes of Sherlock Holmes' secretary as she finds herself on the magical Isle of Nursery, where familiar characters from children's rhymes, such as Humpty Dumpty and Little Bo Peep, can be found wandering about. Everything is getting muddled up, and it's your job to fix each of the rhymes and track down your missing cat, Dr. Watson. I quite enjoyed the writing and the fantastical elements of this one, but still struggled to make any headway in solving any of the puzzles. This seemed like one of the more friendly adventures for novices though, so if I spent a bit more time with it and explored thoroughly, maybe I would start to piece things together. On the flip side of Tape 2 is a game submitted by a reader called Breakdown, which it appears to be quite a simple and fairly easy horizontal shooter at first glance, but once you get past the first stage you are suddenly on foot and things become a lot more challenging. On my first attempt I didn't realise I had very limited ammo during this stage, and so I had fired it all off quickly and was left defenceless. On my second attempt I only fired when enemies were going to crash into me and do me harm, which meant I was able to get to stage 3. This one is a puzzle stage where you have to rotate part of a maze so that a dot will travel all the way to the end and shut down a reactor. Then the whole thing starts over again, but at a higher difficulty. This is an interesting game and I do like the shift in different gameplay styles, but it could have been balanced a little bit better because the shoot 'em up stages feel very easy, whereas the on-foot stages are a lot tougher. Finally we have Frenzy, which is another interesting concept, but the execution left me feeling a bit frustrated with it. The idea is to match shapes by latching onto them with your energy beam and guiding them to another of the same shape. 2 triangles for example, or 2 squares. Matching a pair causes a third shape to be created, such as a circle, and then you can match those together. You finish the level by fulfilling the quota of shapes in the bottom left corner of the screen. It sounds simple, but I found the collision detection quite finicky, especially when trying to match the circles for some reason. There are also enemies roaming about which can be killed with your beam if you're not already holding onto a shape, but you need to be careful or they will swarm you and kill you quickly. It is a quite novel idea for a game, but it feels like it needs a little bit more polish. So there we have it. Silkworm was definitely the clear standout title from these tapes. The Ninja Warriors feels like it has lost something in the transition from the arcade to the C64 though, as I eventually found it rather dull. Both Breakdown and Frenzy showed potential, but neither of them quite feel like the finished article. I will be taking a break from looking at vintage tapes until 2024 now that I'm done with the Zzap mega tapes, but I do have another episode of Covertape Chaos Zzaps in the next generation coming in 2 weeks' time. I also still intend to cover the 2 Evercade C64 collections later in the year, but I'm going to be quite busy until October, so they will have to wait until then. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider leaving a like, dropping a comment, subscribing to the channel or sharing on social media. See you on the next one, and in the meantime, take care.